So this one stars Blake Lively, and it turned out to be something a bit different than I expected. Because it's based on the first book in a series, and it's actually a bit of an origin story. A story that starts with this woman who's apparently in a really bad place. She's been through some things and hasn't really taken it well. She hasn't really dealt with the trauma. She's more or less wallowing in self-pity and has chosen a road to self-destruction. That's until someone shows up with some very interesting information. Information that changes everything and might just be the thing she needs to pick herself up by her bootstraps. So she goes down this rabbit hole and begins to transform into a bit of an action hero, I guess you could say. And on paper that sounds good to me, nothing wrong with it, I like the premise. However, the execution here is really shaky and there are some problems immediately. Starting with these really cheesy and completely unnecessary flashbacks and a score that does not fit the movie. And that's a consistent theme throughout the entire movie too. Poor choices. Both in direction and editing, it just feels clumsy and awkward and nothing really works. But to be fair, there were glimpses of hope in there, things I actually liked too. Like Jude Law's character, and as I said, on paper I like the story here as well. And I'm a huge fan of origin stories, I usually like them more than the follow-ups. Because you get to see an ordinary person transform and evolve into something else. But there was just something about the presentation here that made it all feel so boring. Oh, and this is also a tale of revenge, and I love revenge stories, they're great. But somehow this managed to make that uninteresting too, and I think it all boils down to the fact that, well, I just didn't buy it. I didn't find any of it believable. Not the character, not the story, none of it. They didn't sell me on it, and if you don't buy into a movie, the rest of it doesn't really matter. Because you're not gonna be invested in it and you're not gonna care what happens. And in this case it all falls apart because of clumsy execution. Everything is just poorly handled. And the end result is way more uninteresting and boring than it should be. I mean, I couldn't wait for this to be over, and I got the feeling that this was gonna be a rough one very early on. And that feeling stuck with me all the way through, it just never improved to any significant degree. And I was just reading up on this a little bit before writing this review, and found something interesting. First of all, apparently I'm not the only one feeling this way about it either, because critics and audiences have not liked it. But the interesting part was that this one apparently set a record for worst wide opening weekend in history. It flopped about as hard as it possibly could, not that that's an actually good indicator of quality. Plenty of good movies flop, but if it flops so hard it sets a new record, you probably didn't do a very good job with it, and I honestly expected more from Reed Morano. Because she made the movie I Think We're Alone Now that did have some issues. But at least it was interesting and not a complete mess like this. But yeah, I don't know, sometimes things just don't work out and this is a prime example of that. However, it's not the worst movie I've seen recently, mainly because it didn't feel lazy. It did feel like it tried and there was some effort put into it, but for some reason nothing ended up working. And I'm really struggling to find any redeeming qualities about it. So I think that's about it, but the question remains, would I recommend it? Nope, I'd say this one is very safe to skip, or you could not do that. After all, I'm not your dad. But hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up or sub to the channel, because that would be fantastic. And if you'd like, you can also support me on Patreon or PayPal through the links in the description. And as always, I appreciate you and thanks for watching.